All right, so very sorry for that. Anyway, we've concluded this bill is probably just for show. So at least there's that. Although it is scary that it may be like sort of setting a tone, and then something slightly more palatable comes along, and people bite into that. Anyways, we had a slight issue with our recording, so this is part two. Welcome back for round two of the third episode of the Chabinet meeting, and I'm ready to hand it off to the chair for a
Yes,
discussion.
I think the Pen Corps is already after you, and they're trying to silence you.
Yeah,
That's my
I'd best
perception.
stop now.
Yes, you've read too much. How dare you actually read the bill? How dare you?
Very good.
So yeah, I'll take it from here. That's yeah. That first off, that bill is. You're right. It has to just be for show. But it certainly gives you a window into the mind of some individuals. Maybe they know that none of this would ever happen, but in the same instance, we can't always be certain of that. So who knows what they're thinking? But I'll head over to a foreign affair that's going on right now. I decided to look a little bit towards the European Union, and you probably have the article in front of you there. In the first review on Reuters, the EU comes clean on its military failings, which is kind of not a surprise. But I feel like this article, although it's obviously extremely small, I feel like it's a giant sign from the European Union and NATO, like Joe Biden, help us. We are trying to organize something. So let me read through it here, and we'll
Yeah,
go
sure.
from the point. Okay, so Brussels. The European Union acknowledged on Friday that it lacks the capabilities to meet its goal, pushed most strongly by its biggest members, to become a standalone military power able to help NATO or deploy troops rapidly to regional crises. Seeking to address major shortfalls, the EU's first annual defense review presented to the bloc's defense ministers on Friday found that only 60% of the national troops and weapons nominally available to NATO are in a fit state to be deployed. Um, I mean, I'm not real surprised by any of that. But what's also interesting is how much did Donald Trump push and push and push for, at least as he described it, for the European Union and NATO to, quote, pay their fair share.
Right.
It's
I
like
think
they
it was
were
everybody was
asleep.
supposed to be paying 3%, was it?
I think it was different depending on the nations, and he wanted to change it to 3% or something of that nature.
Right.
It might have been 5%, or at least a few
Well,
countries I know upped it to that.
upped it to 5%.
Someone, yeah, there was
I
someone
know
was at
I
five
know a lot of
percent.
them were playing like 1.6, 2.1, stuff like this. I thought 3% was the goal. Maybe some did. Like I could imagine like really staunch allies presently of the U.S. like Poland increasing it to 5%. They have some scary neighbors.
Yes,
One very scary neighbor. But
yes, yes, they
um,
do.
yeah, I'm not sure. There's also something that's happening where it's like if England really does leave the EU, I mean, the
Hmm.
EU was built on peace and prosperity, and clearly prosperity has not been so attainable. It's been a little bit of a lotus isle, and so if you can't attain prosperity, what makes you think you can guarantee peace?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, we're heading back to speak softly and carry a big stick. At least thinking, from that perspective. But I mean, just from the first two paragraphs there, I'm going to continue on. Is this? Do you think this is Joe Biden come save us? Is this like we can't do this without somebody? Nudge, nudge. We don't have the ability to do so. Nudge, nudge. Is that what you feel that this is just from its opening?
Let me see. First annual defense review found that only 60% of national troops and weapons nominally available to NATO are in a fit state to be deployed. Um, yeah, I mean, it may well be sort of a. I don't know. I think the EU as an organization as a whole is going to have a very hard time organizing any kind of military cooperation. I mean, they had a hard enough time just getting four members to agree to spend money on a jet fighter, and it's
Right.
been 30 years that the Eurofighter's been in development with various groups being in or out or partly in or yes we're in but we want this version. So, I mean, not that the U.S. doesn't have trouble with its partners, but the U.S. never expects to have its partners be, um, I guess, like 110% on board with everything we're doing militarily, right? Just
Right.
because we're fighting a war in Afghanistan doesn't mean that Japan is expected to come along. It's nice when they send a little help, but it's not really counted upon, right?
Right. Oh, you're contributing. Thank you. It's nice to see you here. And
Where
and
if I don't know if a million T-72s roll into Poland tomorrow, um, I think Poland sort of expects some help from Germany and France. I don't know that that help is reasonable to expect, but that's what the expectation of the EU is. Poland a member of the EU?
yes, yes, they are.
Right, much to their chagrin.
Right. There's always arguments going on with that. Poland is actually doing more military maneuvers with Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia than it has with its bigger EU allies.
Well, that's a
Um,
pragmatic reality. Those countries expect to be invaded and have to defend themselves.
right. They're all there together, and they know it. They are the front door. If obviously the Fulda Gap or anything of that nature were to occur, or any push, westward by the Soviet, I mean Russia. But let me move on here and hold your cabinets in. But if you think the European fighter was done quick, there was another article that I could have chosen where the EU-NATO is saying they want to put together a tank where all of them will have it. So that'll be
Yeah, I
really
mean, how,
fun.
how are they going to agree on that? Slash NATO, like, well, so Turkey's on board. Is Turkey a member of NATO?
I,
I mean, even Britain is going to have a very different sort of requirement for any tank it wants to deploy in the future compared to what Germany might want or need, let alone what the Italians can afford to put in or what they think is meaningful in a tank. I mean, Italy's probably not most times even thinking about an invasion, and they've got so many economic problems otherwise. But their terrain is so
not tank.
unhospitable to rapid deployments and maneuvers that they're not looking at the open steppe like Germany is looking at when it looks at the east and it thinks about the sorts of tanks that might benefit them. It
I
just
mean
seems kind
the
of crazy that one size fits all.
Yeah, the Italian mountain troops still have the feathers in their caps from World War One and World War Two, so that tells you a lot about their perspective on their military prowess. Those mountain troops are fantastic. They always have war games with the Swiss, which is always really entertaining to think about. If you think about how that works,
Yeah,
um,
that's pretty crazy.
what I would pay to be a fly on the wall if they actually want to organize this tank and to see the arguments ensue between who's going to make the treads, who's going to make the gun, who's going to make the optics.
I mean that's the game, right? That's the F-35 game. It's like, well, nobody can cancel this, and who cares how bloated it is because sooner or later everybody has a hand in the pie.
Right.
And it's like everything America does, a giant disaster until we just push it through and it works anyway. But it is sort of sad sometimes. All right,
Hmm.
we're way off track. We're getting
Yeah.
too nuts and bolts about our military stuff. But yeah, I think I don't know if the EU it's going to try and get the U.S. to pay whatever it can pay, obviously. But I don't know that they're in a very strong bargaining position at the
Yeah.
moment.
I don't want to.
That may change. But
Before you go too far, I still have my question for you, and I've obviously I've noticed here that you, because of our little error, you still have to ask your question to me in regards to your article. Let's finish this one first, and we'll go back and I'll let you ask your question, and then we'll do mine.
yeah,
Just
yeah,
do it
for
at
sure.
the
You
end.
you go ahead and ask your question. I've got the notes out and I'm ready to take it down.
Well, I'm not there yet. I still want to finish the article. I'm going to run through real quick. But then I'm saying after we finish this article, we'll do your question. Uh, yes, there's still more article. So EU governments are also reluctant to deploy those troops. The report found formal EU military missions received just 7% of all EU states' military personnel committed worldwide, with problems generating troop levels, it said. You would consider largely known because of the bloc. Yes, obviously you can't produce troops because it's the European Union. Not surprised by that. Um, France, Germany, Italy, Spain hope to detail review of public recognition of failures will be a watershed. Quote, the EU does not have all the required military capabilities available in order to fulfill its level of ambition, said the report. EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell told reporters, quote, European defense suffers from fragmentation, duplication, and insufficient operational engagement. And this is the paragraph I found interesting because, I mean, you were already talking about Poland. Smaller member
Yep.
states, including Greece, Sweden, and Poland, have sought to protect domestic armament industries, which leads to duplication in weapons output, thwarting coordination geared to the protection of the continent as a whole. I mean, how many of these
The
European nations are
protection of the continent as a whole from what?
right?
Europe
Right.
has always been more of a threat to itself than anything outside Europe.
Well, right, but if you're the Swedes, if you're the Finns, and if you're Poland, you're looking east like, hey guys, are you going to help us if this is going to go down? So we don't care what you're doing deeper into the continent. We need support. So be damned if we're going to be building our own tanks and stuff.
Look, and also memory runs deep. Military memory runs very deep. And, you can make all kinds of concessions towards doing things in a more modern way and being more cooperative. But all that flies out the window when the first bullets start flying.
Right.
And some of these countries remember that it was not too long ago that France or Germany, or in some cases Sweden, were more predatory towards their neighbors.
Well, in that case, the Poles got a chip to play. I mean, being invaded multiple times, they should just be able to be like, hey, leave us alone. Let us build our military so we can shoot at anyone who comes, into my front lawn. Mm, I
So,
can't
so
blame
they,
them.
how could they think that these countries who have never come to their defense, even when nominally allied to them, would behave differently when things got difficult in the future?
And that's when you say it that way. Something that also just popped in my head is I told you about the military dress rehearsals. The maneuvers that Poland was doing with its neighbors there, and United States forces were involved in those maneuvers. And obviously, they're right on the border with Russia. And I remember there was some European officials that were like, "How dare they do that?" To draw the ire of Russia, and it's the game is such a mess because you claim that you want to be independent, but at the same time you're going to complain when people are training. Now, yes, you're training on the border with Russia, but at the same time, this is something that's been going on for how long? They train their troops in front of us, we train our troops in front of them. Uh, the game continues. Um, how involved is Europe really when it comes to actually really wanting to defend itself is another question to go on. But I don't want to go too off topic. I'm going to keep moving on here so we
Yeah,
can
sure.
keep moving. France and Germany also disagree on how far to develop EU military cooperation independent of the United States, by far the biggest power in NATO and Europe's effective security guarantor since World War II. But after 4 years of hostility towards NATO from U.S. President Donald Trump, the EU says it can no longer rely solely on the United States to solve its crises in its neighborhood. Um, the EU has been working since December of 17 to develop more firepower independently of the United States. The effort has been led by France, the EU's remaining major military power after Britain, which opposed such cooperation, left the bloc. France has been messing around a lot in Africa lately.
France has never not been messing around in Africa.
Uh,
I mean, they
right,
have
but
the Algerian disaster and other things.
they're always constantly involved in some way, which is interesting considering Macron has mentioned multiple times that he is not the type of president to get involved in too many things, except for Africa, which is always the backyard to some degree
I mean,
of
to be fair,
France's
we've
mentality.
been quietly very, very involved in Africa in the last 15 years, more so even in scale and at some times than we have been in the Middle East.
I mean, this is true. We usually do it in a well, I don't want to say usually do it in a quieter manner. We attempt to do it in a quieter
We
manner.
attempt to be surreptitious about it. I'm not exactly sure what's going on there. I'm not as astute as to
Uh,
what our interests
I
there
mean,
might actually be.
go look at Libya right now. That
Well, Libya's a whole other can of worms because that's, I understand what our
Libya,
interests are there. They're Mediterranean interests. I'm not sure what our interests are on the Gold Coast, for instance, but
right? All right, so with a weapon development fund being set up backed by 8 billion euros from the EU budget for the first time next year, French President Emmanuel Macron has called for more sovereignty in the EU's ability to defend itself. They want a military doctrine by 2022. The report, part of EU's strategy to develop a self-standing military capacity over the next decade, urged EU governments to jointly produce 6 areas of weaponry and end costly national duplication, including focusing on a new tank or new battle tank, a patrol class surface ship, and counter drone technology.
good luck with that counter drone technology.
Just go. You need to go talk to the go talk to the Mongolians and just train a bunch of hawks and eagles to take drones down.
Maybe it's not as
The
crazy
little
as it
ones.
sounds.
They legit tried that in California. That was one of the things the CIA was looking at, was this company that was training eagles to take down small
That's
drones.
pretty awesome.
I
Although,
mean,
I mean, the way that escalates is a lot of dead eagles.
well, I,
Once
I
the
mean,
drones start having anti-bird countermeasures, like what does it
anti
take to? You
to
just
take down an
put like a
eagle.
little micro claymore on the drone, and the eagle gets close, and bam.
I
Not that
mean,
I would ever suggest such a horrific thing, but that's what
right.
your enemies will do.
I mean, we're still using seals, literal seals. We're still using dolphins in a
Yeah.
multitude of ways for the Navy. I mean, look what the Russians did with the canines in World War II.
No, you're probably right. You're probably right. There's probably a point at which it makes sense. So there's probably a point
So
at which you're breeding these things for the purpose anyway. So
yeah, but it's a little easier to work with a canine than it is a golden eagle, I guess.
yeah, I mean, eagle's a predator. It will turn on you if you
A
let up
lot
a
of
little
training.
bit, and that's a dangerous thing to be playing with.
Yeah. So obviously, we've gone through this. You and I have talked about this before, but let me give you. Oh wait, no, that's right. Do you want to do my question first or your question first before we forget all this?
I will take your question first.
Okay. So, how do you think Donald Trump's pushing of European governments to begin paying, quote, their fair share into NATO EU military spending will affect the United States European relationship going forward? Has Donald Trump shot us in the foot, or has he exempt us from an ever increasingly larger bill?
Okay, let me boil that down into something boilerplate.
Here, I'm going to send it to you as well, so you don't have to like try to memorize it. There you go.
You've got the whole damn question. Hold on.
Yep. Boom. There you go.
All right. How do you think Donald Trump's pushing? I got to put this whole thing in the record.
Oh,
Okay, with all the
I mean,
hedges.
you can rewrite it.
No, I can copy paste it. The question is that whole thing going in the record as is? All right.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Has Donald Trump shot us in the foot, or has he exempted us?
Sorry.
That's all good. I can fix it.
Long
From
story
an
short,
ever increasingly larger bill. Can't both of those things be true?
can they?
Yeah.
But
You
do
can
you
have an
think it will
ever
work?
increasing larger bill, and it can also be a problem militarily down the road.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, judging by this article, I mean, clearly, well, I would say clearly,
Okay. I will say, judging by this article, it indicates that the Europeans are looking around and going, "Oh well, maybe we actually do have to worry about defense." Um, so my vote is Trump has actually benefited the United States by forcing our supposed allies to be helpful, to be benefactors in the alliance rather than being leeches.
hmm
Uh,
just sitting on their hands.
yeah, I was just like, maybe it is good if Poland has a few tanks. Maybe it is good if Germany has a few missiles. Like, maybe we should not be the only ones doing fighter patrols. Not that NATO wasn't, but the fighter patrols they were doing were pretty sad, right? We had 20 years of the Russians sort of bullying NATO fighter pilots into giving way to Russian
Right.
bombers and things. Not that those bombers were flying actively with bomb-seeking targets, but it was a very clear message, like, hey, we can do what we want in your airspace, because you don't have the guts.
Yeah. What are you going to do about it?
What are you going to do about it? You're not funding your military the way the United States is. And a lot of these
Right.
aircraft are flying without armaments, or with like second-rate or third-rate stuff. Stuff should have been retired. Training programs that are much diminished. Fuel, they don't have enough fuel to get the pilots enough hours. So
Mm-hmm.
pilots that are very green, relative to American or Russia pilots. Yeah, I think some of these countries should be looking to their own defense a little bit. And you can't guarantee that Russia's the aggressor in any nightmare scenario. There are such things as lesser wars, and Europe has not done away with the horror of war. It will return. So
Yeah.
that's my vote.
Still in their mind, obviously World War I, World War II, that does not go away. Although we might be finally reaching a point where so many people in those nations have forgotten of the horrors of war. But I
People
don't
are
know.
still murdering each other in the Balkans today. People are murdering
Right.
each other in eastern Ukraine today. People are murdering each other in Armenia today. This is not going to change. And when you say, "Oh well, that's not Europe," I think you're just burying your head in the sand and saying it couldn't happen to me.
How many French, German, Italian citizens do that though? Oh, we're beyond that. We're beyond World War now.
Most humans prefer to do that. It's the way you go about your daily life without cowering in terror in your basement.
Right.
But it is not a healthy thing for a government to do. And that is the problem.
Certainly.
Okay, so in any case, my vote is, well, it's supposed to be a yes or no. Hold on. So what do I answer? I answer
Well, I mean, it's or a prediction.
exempted. Trump's policy has been good for the U.S. and NATO. The EU is a lost cause. That's my vote.
That's great. It's just not worth it. I mean, it is worth it, but I guess we're going to be sort of together on this one because I think it has been a positive thing. Donald Trump forcing the European Union NATO to actually pump some more money into their militaries, and they're starting to realize that now. But I'm curious how many European nations are now going to see Donald Trump departing the office of the presidency, and now they're going to look at Joe Biden and be like, "Hey, can we have the old deal back? What can we do here together?" But that thought is now in their heads, and some of those leaders in Europe are regardless of whoever's in office, are going to say, "You know what? Maybe there's something to be said about pumping up our industry and building, tanks or rifles or whatever it may be."
Yep. All right. Well, I think it's my turn for a question. So my
Yes.
question is, will legislation pass in Pennsylvania or nationally that is not as sweeping as the horror of House Bill 2957, Pennsylvania, but
Mm-hmm.
is a restriction on your privacy, like or your gun rights, so that causes you to have to register if you own certain types of firearms.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think you will see or requires you to divulge medical information? Because let's not, I hear people say, oh, let's have only people who have demonstrated that they're mentally unstable go on this list, and that list of people will not be allowed to buy firearms. Well, that's a violation of your medical privacy rights. It's a violation of HIPAA laws.
Right.
So you think you're going to see an infringement on some front, either Second or Fourth Amendment this year, either from the federal government or from Pennsylvania?
If not this year, maybe next year, but yes, I think you are. Joe Biden is going to put, if he is saying he's going to do it now. Well, that's something that's really curious. He said he wanted to put Beto O'Rourke in to specifically go after AR-15s, quote, assault class weapons. He said he was going to do that. Now, mind you, he said that, on the campaign trail. Who knows what he'll do now, especially with the much farther left-leaning people in his own party nipping at his heels. He might not be willing to do that as much anymore, but I think he will.
So
I think he will.
um,
He's going to try to put something through.
oh, okay. So what's your bet by the year 2024?
I'm going to go 2022.
By 2022.
Yep.
All right. You're saying yes, Beto will get something done.
Excuse me.
Mission
Well,
accomplished.
they might. Ooh, that's depending on how strategic you want to be. Yeah, he's got to do something by 2022. You can't look at the 2022 date and live in fear of the Republicans taking over the House. He's got to try to put something through before then.
Okay, and it's going to be something national. So this is just what you're saying is not only is this PA thing not really serious, it is serious in being a sort of blueprint for what might be pushed through nationally, and it's a test to see what might be palatable.
Maybe I'm looking more at just Second Amendment rights, like certain assault class weapons. Again, I'm saying that in an extremely broad term.
Is the assault weapon ban of 1993 still active?
It's not active at the moment, but they
Okay.
want
But
something
if
similar
I
to
want
it.
to, but the 1986 ban is still active, right? So
The one
if I
before that?
want
Yeah.
a belt-fed weapon or
Yes.
even a fully automatic repeating weapon, I have to go to my local sheriff, get permission, send a letter to the FBI, let them know, to have the background check done, and then I can maybe get a license, depending on whether or not my county is interested in issuing it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, but Clinton's bill is the one that's gone.
That's the one that said nothing that looks like a black scary rifle, basically.
Right, but there were so many people that said that was a horrible failure in so many ways. So,
Because it was branded as a quote assault weapons ban, and that's an awfully nebulous thing. So assault weapons sound bad, and then when you look at what was actually classified as a quote assault weapon, it was pretty much most rifles.
hmm I'm very curious to see what he's going to do in this instance. And I mean, obviously, Biden getting elected, he ran when it comes to gun control on some very strict things, and he's going to have to put something forward. The question is, does he put it forward before 2022, or does he wait till after those votes occur?
My
Um,
answer is yes, but it will be at the state level. Pennsylvania will do something before the federal government does that infringes, and I bet it will be the Fourth Amendment that is actually infringed before the Second.
so he just goes the camouflage route, which is instead of doing something big and bad, I'm going to suggest something to the states and let the states do it, so I don't take the heat from it.
Yeah,
Because
yeah. There will be a nice letter sent to all the governors, and then, but what there will be is like a push culturally. It'll be like we have to do something. This is hurting people. Look how bad this is. Something must be done, and what will have to be done, and it will be presented as this bipartisan thing.
right,
Will be, hey, look, we just have to make these lists of dangerous people. And it will be
yeah.
nothing about, there won't be any language about firearms. So
hmm
the Second Amendment, the usual Second Amendment defenses won't go through. It won't be like the NRA comes and defends it, because it'll be like, oh well, it's just going after the Fourth Amendment.
And it'll be that's it. It'll be camouflage. It'll be on the back burner. No one will see it, or at least that'll be the intent of it. Because bringing anything up nationally will instantaneously stoke, the fires of the Second Amendment followers in so many ways. And you'll have states like Texas and which would be like, you be damned taking my firearms. Oh, so yes, he's going to try something. The question is, how will he dress it?
Yeah, I think it'll be a state registry, and it'll be pushed. See, this is the scariest part of this language. It'll be pushed not under uh, firearms. It'll be pushed under health. They're going to say, for mental health, this must be done, or for COVID tracing. This is just an extension of contact tracing. We're just going to trace who's got a firearm. I think it might be something like that. I probably made it sound more malicious than it's going to be. It's going to sound much more benign than that. That's my bet. But the results will be the same.
I think you're spot on. I think you're right. Unless he gets pushed really hard to make a national example, that I think would be, if you were Joe Biden, that would be the intelligent thing to do if you really wanted to get legislation pushed through. Regardless.
I don't have to be Joe Biden, right? I can be Joe Biden's think tank, which is God knows what it is. Kamala Harris, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, well, maybe that'll be certainly something we can talk about next week, is to look at who he's bringing into office for sure.
Yep, we're running out of time, so.
Yeah, so obviously this is our third installment. We may have had a little error, but that's okay. We'll try to put two videos, not together, but in two separate things.
I am going to close with the Enchiridion, so I'm going to open up my drawer. Yep. And number 2. So we'll get number 2 out, and sorry for the technical issues. We're going to get better and better at this. Hopefully the audio quality is improving. So here we go. Epictetus, number 2. If you're not sure who Epictetus was, he's pretty interesting. He's a guy who was lame. He's a guy who was a slave. He has every reason to complain, and then he says all these things that are just awesome. They're like reasons you shouldn't whine, reasons you shouldn't complain, reasons that life's all right anyway. So very inspirational, I think Epictetus is. All right, number 2 from the Enchiridion. Remember that desire demands the attainment of that which you are desirous, and aversion demands avoidance of that which you are averse. That he who fails the object of his desires is disappointed, and he who incurs the object of his aversion is wretched. If, then, you shun only those undesirable things which you can control, and never incur anything which you shun, but if you shun sickness or death or poverty, you will run the risk of wretchedness. You can't control those things. Remove the habit of aversion, then, from all things that are not within our power, and apply it to undesirable things which are within our power. But for the present, altogether restrain desire. For if you desire any of the things not within our own power, you must necessarily be disappointed. And you are not yet secure of those things which are within our power, and so are legitimate objects of desire. Where it is practically necessary for you to pursue or avoid anything, do even this with discretion and gentleness and moderation.